What makes a particular product a must-have for someone? And more specifically, is there a focal range and f-stop combination that makes something a must for any creator? That to gloss over it in your purchasing journey would be a crime against creativity. Well, when I first set foot in the Fujifilm space, this was the kind of excitement and enthusiasm that orbited the 16-55 f2.8 lens. I kid you not, people were recommending this thing regardless of what I was about to capture or create. So after 3 years of test driving this thing as part of my daily drivers for a lot of the productions, where have I landed? I'm gonna share that with you. Let's get this started. Good morning everyone, Gajan here, and before I get started, really quickly, if you're not already, please do consider subscribing to the channel because a lot of work goes into writing and producing this content that is aiming to empower you guys and educate you guys, especially with your purchasing decisions. So if you think this is valuable, please do consider subscribing. It does help this channel reach more people. And listen, if you're not happy with your subscription, there's a very generous return policy. So there's that as well. Well, enough of that. Let's get into this review, the 16-55 f2.8 lens from Fujifilm. The equivalent focal length of this lens is approximately 24 to 84 millimeters, so it's not as ubiquitous sounding as 24 to 70, but it's still pretty close enough to be in the same classroom, especially when you factor in that constant f2.8 aperture. We're talking about that lens that's supposed to be that do-it-all, that all-arounder. While this lens is a little over 650 grams, and that might not sound like much, when it's mounted on most Fuji bodies, it will shift that center of gravity forward, but not so much so like the 50 to 140 f2.8 lens from Fujifilm. And really, when you're using it in a lot of situations, this is a size and weight that's gonna feel relatively comfortable and not too overbearing. The aperture ring, even after years of use, still has that satisfying click to it as you control how wide the aperture goes, and the manual focus ring still offers plenty of room for you to pull focus. But how does this perform? Pretty good. Despite being announced over 5.5 years ago, this lens with this twin linear motor is still able to focus with a high degree of accuracy and precision. Especially when you pair this to modern Fujifilm cameras like the X-T4, you can lock into your subject and have it stay there with a high degree of accuracy. In fact, most of my voiceovers in this studio are recorded on the 16-55 lens. There isn't this timidness to the focus. It just locks in and lands it precisely. It hits it like a Russian gymnast, if you will. When I'm using this lens, especially under conditions like this, I know that it's gonna grab focus. I know that it's gonna work, and I can just focus on, well, reading this script to you guys. Furthermore, it does all of this in a near silent manner, making it extremely usable in many conditions, and especially those where you can't have your camera making any ancillary noises. Now, enough about that. How do the images come out? Well, the images come out great, similar to those that you'll find on my print shop. How's that for transition? Listen, before I continue, if you want to support this channel and get some dope art in return, I do have a good amount left. So check out the print shop of mine. The link is in the description, and you can find yourself some great images that I was able to capture in my recent trip to India. These are exclusive, they are limited. Each one is captured, edited, and printed in my studio. I sign and number them before I ship them out to you. So if you're interested in that, please check out the link. Enough of that, let's get back to this review. The images come out really crisp, especially at the center. And when you go to that f4 to f8 range, you're gonna get that corner to corner sharpness that you might desire. The colors as well, they're not oversaturated, they're not too contrasty. And this is what separates this from some of the more affordable zoom lenses from Fujifilm. I just found that this was more true to life in what it was rendering. I can customize my picture profiles, my custom profiles in Fujifilm if I wanted a different look. But again, when I'm doing video and I want accuracy, I found that this delivered the highest accuracy with respect to their X-mount photo zoom lenses. All in all, the picture rendition, whether it's photo or video, was effortlessly beautiful. It didn't play to any end of the spectrum too much. And let's be honest, this is undoubtedly because of the optics, the coating, and the chassis that's used for this zoom lens from Fujifilm compared to their other lenses. And I will also say, on the topic of chassis, this thing is weather sealed. So if you find yourself scaling the backside of a waterfall, well, this is a lens that you'll be confident to take there and capture content along the way. Now, while being critical of this lens may open myself up for criticism from, let's say, really passionate users, there's still plenty of area for improvement even on a lens like this. On the widest end, you're gonna get a bit of distortion and vignetting, especially when you compare this against the 16mm f1.4 from Fujifilm. And if you switch to the telephoto side, if we're just looking at the results, it doesn't come close or outperform the 56mm f1.2. And now these observations really shouldn't come as a surprise, but I would like to see improvements made in a Mark II of this lens that addresses this difference between this zoom and its prime counterparts. While it doesn't have to be as good as the primes, I would like to see the gap in barrel distortion and vignetting just closed a bit more and reach a bit more closer to the optical quality on the widest and telephoto sides. Further, I'd be interested to see if they can integrate the quad linear focusing motor in the 90mm f2 into a Mark II version of the 16-55, and building in OIS, optical image stabilization, almost goes without saying, so I hope that's in the blueprint too, but these are some clear-cut ways where this lens can actually get better. Overall, using the 16-55 f2.8 from Fujifilm felt like I could capture whatever I needed, and having used the equivalent lenses on Nikon, Canon, Sony, and even Panasonic, I never felt like this lens was lacking in any significant way. When I start to pixel peep intentionally and compare this against the Sony and Nikon counterparts, seems to be a little bit more crispiness in the rendering there than the 16-55 from Fujifilm. But to be honest, this just goes out the window when you start viewing your images from a standard viewing distance, even from a mobile device. It's just not really a concern. Unlike some other lenses, namely the 16-80 f4 that Fujifilm recently released, this lens doesn't have optical image stabilization. And I'll be honest, I never felt like that was a limiting factor for me, but I will say it would be nice to have in a future iteration of this product. If you feel that you need optical image stabilization, then maybe the 16-80mm from Fujifilm is a better option for you. I'm just letting you know that for all the things that I capture, whether it's photo or video, I never felt like I needed it. I never felt like it was a hindrance to what I was trying to capture. There's also the 18-55 lens from Fujifilm that has optical image stabilization as well. And I will say they call it a kit lens, and I feel like that's a disservice to the quality. It's a great lens, so if you're just getting started, don't knock this lens. You can capture some remarkable results. And I will say it's better to spend within your means and develop your eye than to go all out, to go broke and buy something and resent it because the images don't line up with what you had imagined. So just keep that in mind. The 18-55 is still a great lens to get started with as well. With all that said, how do I feel about this 16-55 f2.8 from Fujifilm? Well, it earns a spot on my kit, so that should tell you how I feel about it personally. It provides rich and reliable results even in the most demanding projects and allows me to keep moving forward. However, it's something that I use exclusively for capturing video on the Fujifilm system, and when it comes to photography, I'm always going to go to my primes first. If you're asking me, it never outperforms the premium Fuji primes in any noticeable way. If I'm about to capture something wide, I'm gonna reach for that 16-1.4. If I want some environmental portraiture, I'm gonna go to that 35-1.4. If I wanna be discreet and just capture some street images, I'm gonna reach for the 23 f2. And if I wanna grab really stunning portraits, well, it's a toss-up between the 56-1.2 and the 90 f2. Really, even though this lens has a red badge and stands in a premium class amongst the zoom lenses, it really falls in the shadows of the Fuji primes. Getting this lens is a trade-off between convenience and character. And now, don't get me wrong, convenience is really, really important. Convenience is what you need in dynamic environments such as events. And more philosophically speaking, convenience can pay the bills. Convenience can break glass ceilings. Convenience can change the goddamn world. Okay, listen, I'll tone it down a little bit, but convenience is an important factor in your content creation. If you're the type of person that needs convenience with a high degree of optical quality because of the environment that you're capturing in, whether it's video or photo, you will not be disappointed by the 16-55 f2.8 lens. However, and this is just personally speaking, when I step back and look at the landscape and look at the must-have lenses for the Fujifilm system, for me, the 16-55 f2.8 doesn't make that list. And that's not to say it doesn't make the top 5 or that it isn't great. I just step back and I look at what my definition of must-have is, and I don't think that this meets that definition. That being said, there's enough utility in a lens like this that will make it a must-have for another group of creators. If you want to know where you land and if this meets that definition for you, think about the environment you capture in, how dynamic it is and how demanding it is for you, and whether convenience is an important variable in your content creation process. And I think going in with an open mind, that will guide you in the right direction. As always, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and if you haven't already, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. But more importantly, let's continue this conversation in the comments. Let me know what you think about the 16-55 f2.8. I let you know what I think, so you tell me, is this a must-have lens for you? And if not, what are some other lenses that you consider are must-haves? I'd love to continue the conversation in the comments below. As always, my name's Gajan. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.